Joining me now for more on this is ABC News contributor Dr. John Brownstein. Dr. Brownstein, Thanksgiving's now just a week away. We all want to gather with friends and family. Those newlyweds seem to think that they were taking the right precautions for their wedding. So what can people learn from these events ahead of Thanksgiving?
Yeah. Hi. Thanks, Diane. I mean, we've been talking about this over and over and over again. The complicating factor here is that everyone thinks they're an exception to the rule, right? We've talked about quarantining, social distancing, mask wearing. But every time someone looks at their personal situation, they say, oh, well, I can tweak things. I can get around it. And that's the reality is people tweak things. They get into indoor settings, and then there are these super spreader events. And so we have to think very long and hard about Thanksgiving and how we're going to do what's right to get through it. The real idea is here's how do we limit gatherings to households, right? The biggest mistake is to assume that your household is safe when you bring people from the outside, especially if you have poor ventilation, which most households do, right? So of course, opening windows and all those things will help, but clearly staying with your own household will be important. Now, of course, we can layer in testing and quarantining to try to get to something safe, but the reality is it just can't be business as usual when it comes to Thanksgiving this year.
And what about college kids coming home for the holiday? What steps can they take to keep their families safe?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing, right? So hopefully these students are already quarantining, because the best thing would be to quarantine for 14 days before going to that household. Clearly, that's going to be challenging, especially as students travel around this country. So maybe a week of quarantining plus testing will help to reduce risk. And also when they're at home, trying to reduce those risks of activities, right? Small gatherings, try to stick to virtual events, limit shopping and going to sporting events. Whatever you can do to stay within a bubble will be so important. I mean, we just hit 250,000 deaths in this country. We are rapidly approaching 300,000 by the end of this year. Whatever we can do now will help to curb the spread. And also on top of that, it's not just about the students going home, it's also about returning. Can they quarantine with enough time and get tested to come back to school safely as well?
Thankfully, we've had a lot of promising vaccine news this week, and Oxford is now the latest. They're in phase 2 trials, soon to be in phase 3. How much does it matter to have the potential for different vaccine options?
Well, listen, having multiple options is fantastic, right? Because each are going to have their different limitations. We've spoken about cold storage and supply chain and availability of doses. But I think it's going to be especially important as we look at the data from the phase 3 clinical trials, because some of these vaccines might do well for younger populations, some might do well for elderly populations. So having those options will be great. The CDC is actually charged with making those recommendations, and they do this every year for the flu. I mean, the flu vaccine, we have many options, and they're targeted to different subpopulations. So, but as an individual, you're just going to be taking one vaccine. You're going to have 2 doses of that vaccine. So you may not have a choice, but adding all this manufacturing capacity is so great and will ultimately mean that more people can have access to this vaccine.
And in terms of who gets it first, what do we know about that at this point? And will people who already had COVID, will they have to wait for people who haven't to get the vaccine first?
Yeah, this is actually an amazing question. And in fact, it's not true, because we first don't know your immunity levels. So even if maybe you were exposed, we don't know if you're still immune. And also being able to track that would be incredibly difficult. So the reality is the recommendation will be for everyone simultaneously. That being said, of course, healthcare providers, frontline workers, essential workers, and the vulnerable will get access to this vaccine first, and then will make its way down to the broader population. But it will not be defined by whether you've been infected before or not.
All right, Dr. John Brownstein, we appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.